So we're welcoming everyone to this session. Please continue, for those of you who are joining us on Zoom, to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're from. Welcome to our Women's Earth and Climate Action Network event, Indigenous Youth Leading Solutions for Climate Justice. And I'm telling you, this is an amazing group of leaders with us. This event is being held during the 23rd session of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. My name is Osprey Oriole Lake, and I'm the founder and executive director of WeCan. And today we will be hearing from an incredible group of young Indigenous leaders who are fighting every day to protect and defend the earth, the sacred, the climate, and their rights and communities. They will also share with us their frontline struggles, as well as their visions and strategies for shaping a healthy and equitable world. And we're truly thrilled to organize an event with such remarkable leaders. And we're going to be hearing about impacts of fossil fuels, the climate crisis, their communities, how they're implementing solutions, their visions, practicing traditional knowledge systems, upholding Indigenous rights, and advancing policies of care and climate justice. And as I mentioned, many of us are here during the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues in New York, so have been really working all week to continue to really fight for Indigenous rights, specifically uplifting free, prior, and informed consent, and many other issues that are so key right now. I think as we open, it's good to ask, how can we connect more deeply in our defense and protection of Mother Earth in the face of escalating climate crises, dangerous economic structures, colonialism, environmental racism, and rights violations? And clearly we can't win these struggles on our own. And so we need to strengthen our relationships and efforts together. And that's what we're doing here today. We're going to be hearing from the youth leaders who have really drawn a red line to protect and defend Mother Earth, all species, and the very web of life. And we're here to stand with them. Indigenous youth are working worldwide in the face of the escalating climate crisis, dangerous neoliberal economic structures, Indigenous rights and human rights violations, and a legal system that treats nature as a commodity instead of the sacred system of life. And at WeCan, we are strong advocates of rights-based approaches to solutions, from Indigenous rights to gender rights to nature rights. And it's really important to highlight that violence against the earth is directly linked to violence against women. Patriarchy, colonization, and capitalism are based on the power and exploitation of women, the land, Indigenous peoples, Black and Brown people, gender diverse people all around the world. And so this also means visibilizing these systems of oppression and taking them on directly and offering our vision of an equitable future. This also means visibilizing the horrific violence in Gaza and Israel, which has its roots in interlocking and historical systems of oppression, and clearly to state that there must be an immediate and permanent ceasefire. The killing must stop now. We want to have Gaza live. There must be safety and care for all communities and hostages safely returned. We demand a ceasefire. The earth and our communities are facing many daunting challenges, yet Indigenous women globally are making a significant difference in changing our current destructive trajectory. And we need to support the power, leadership, and visibility of the youth at every level of decision-making and funding and resource opportunity. And we're going to be sharing the speakers as they are having their chance to speak. We'll be sharing their names, their organizations, and also they're on our website. So now I'm going to introduce our esteemed panelists in the order that they will be speaking. We are so honored to have with us Carol Montour. She is Kania Mohawk, and Climate Leadership Coordinator from Indigenous Climate Action in Turtle Island, Canada. And we're so honored to have you with us. Then we'll be hearing from Judy Kipkenda. She is Ogiek and the founder of Koibatek, Ogiek, Women and Youth Network in Kenya. So glad to have you with us. Then we'll be hearing from Morgan Springs Plenty, Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe, Environmental Justice Activist, Digital Organizing Fellow, Indigenous Environmental Network, Turtle Island, USA. So glad to have you with us. Then we'll be hearing from Pema Wangmo Lama. She's Mugum. She is a program coordinator for the National Indigenous Women's Federation in Nepal. And then we'll be hearing from Sheila Barefoot. She is Chiricahua Apache, environmental justice advocate from Turtle Island, USA. Then we'll be hearing from Ella Ravna Naka Lajavari. She is Sami, chair of the Sami Association's Youth Committee from Norway. And then we will be hearing lastly, but not least, Talia Landry. She is Mashpee Wapanag Youth Representative from Turtle Island, USA. And what a powerhouse here of speakers. And now I would like to hand the floor over to you, Carol, to start us off. Thank you. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Osprey. Good morning, Sego Sevaguego. My name is Carol Montour. I am of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. I am Mohawk Wolf Clan from Six Nations of the Grand River, where I'm calling to you from. Firstly, I just want to thank the WeCan team for their work in organizing this panel. You know, coordinating multiple panelists, different time zones, navigating tech issues is, never easy. So just thank you again for your work and the grounding that you just did. And also just really grateful to share space with my co-panelists who are, leading really incredible work in their territories and beyond. And just the opportunity to speak with you all today on some issues that are really important to me during, again, the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. And I think at a really important moment in time. This work is really close to my heart, something that I've been involved with for many years now. And I think especially as a young person, although I am slowly getting on the upper end of the youth category, but I will be, I think the youth are leading this because we have inherited without consent this planetary crisis. And we are situated into the future in a time that's quite frightening. And I think especially looking beyond just the youth here, but also, looking to younger people and the future generations, this work is really important. And as Indigenous people of the world, globally here, we are not just demanding real solutions to climate change, we are actively leading them and stewarding a better future for all. And we have a framework for a balanced existence on this planet as part of nature in relation to Mother Earth and to the rest of creation. As Haudenosaunee, we have specific responsibilities that are defined by our laws from our creation story, through our original instructions, the Great Law of Peace, and our what's called KOWYN, our good message. And all of these mean we have specific responsibilities that we can take from the land what we need to feed and house and care for our families, but we also must ensure that that land remains healthy for the coming generations. And our communities have been dealing with the onslaught of violence that came with colonization. And despite the impacts of those historical harms and the ongoing ones, we continue to survive and to thrive in our territories and continue to be in good relationship with our lands. We know that 80% of the world's biodiversity is stewarded by Indigenous people, even though we represent around 5% of the global population. This is again because of our relationship to our lands and our role as stewards. And the changes in our climate that we are now observing, rising temperatures, extreme weather, sea level rise, forest fires, these are not an accident. And I think of these as like an actual physical manifestation of 500 years of colonialism and exploitation of what they call resources, and driven by this like insatiable greed and this need for never-ending profit and economic gain. And it's important, I believe, to understand those root causes of what have caused climate change and how they intersect with the many forms of harm to the planet that we are seeing beyond just, again, those rising temperatures, understanding loss of biodiversity, toxic pollution and accumulation of chemicals in our waterways and ecosystems, as well as the cultural destruction and theft and colonization of our lands, militarization. All of these forms of racialized and gendered poverty are part of what has created these conditions for climate change. And at Indigenous Climate Action, where I work, we participate in the global Indigenous peoples movement in spaces such as the Permanent Forum and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And our movement has this slogan, which is colonialism caused climate change, Indigenous rights are the solution. And again, it's important to understand those root causes. And the reason that we say this, and the reason that we say that Indigenous rights are the solution, and in particular, youth, women, LGBTQ plus, and gender expansive people need to be leading those climate solutions, are because we need to bring ourselves back in balance with nature. I often see this this tendency to describe climate solutions as we need to the fight against climate change, or we need to tackle climate change or combat climate change. But I've never really liked that wording, this concept of this like really violent patriarchal way of conceiving of things when we are part of nature. And we have to bring ourselves back in balance with nature. And our climate solutions extend beyond things like renewable energy, walkable cities, and electric vehicles. And I think those are important and part of a solution. But I think that the mainstream climate movement seems to be able to envision a world that is free of fossil fuels and powered by renewable energy, but they can't envision a world of sovereign and thriving Indigenous people that are free from the harms of colonialism and capitalism. And our people can envision that world, and we have that world. We have that knowledge that's been passed down to us by our ancestors and how they did it. And we can take that knowledge and our cultural values and apply them to this world that we are creating. And I always want to uplift that as Indigenous people, our lifeways are viable and effective climate solutions, and us practicing them is an important part of climate action. And I just want to be mindful of my time for all of my panelists. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the solutions that I'm involved with, both professionally, personally and professionally. And I also want to state that all of us, every single person, has a role to play in climate action. And whatever your interests or your passions are, or your gifts, climate change intersects with that. And whatever that is, we all need to be leading solutions beyond, what we think of typically. And in order to enact that transformative change, and whether that's art or poetry or music or policy work, land defense, language revitalization, these are all important. In my community, which has been heavily impacted by industry, unwanted development, industrialization, Six Nations of the Grand River, we are the most populous First Nations community in all of Canada. We are located in what is now known as Southern Ontario, in the most populated part of the country. 50% of the entire population of Canada lives within our lands. And we have long been impacted by industrial agriculture, industry, mining, and that's all without our consent on our territory. And I volunteer with an organization that's called Protect the Tract. I encourage you to reach out. We have a website, we have social media. We came out of 1492 Land Back Lane, which is a frontline land defense struggle where we pushed back against an unwanted housing development on our territories. And 3 years ago, it'll actually be 3 years ago on the 20th, our hereditary leadership declared a moratorium on development in our territories without our consent. And that's how Protect the Tract came to be. And so we are a Haudenosaunee-led project that conducts research, policy development, to exercise sovereignty through the promotion of land stewardship over the Haudenosaunee Tract where we are. And we have led efforts to rewild our lands through planting native wildflowers and plants, community garden products, hide tanning. And we are actually currently in the process of developing our own climate action strategy. There is not a climate action strategy within the Grand River. And under the guidance of our traditional leadership, myself and some of the other youth in our community are going to be outlining a long-term environmental and climate strategic direction with goals and objectives for our existence as Haudenosaunee on the Grand River, now into the future. And I always say that our solutions need to be focused on the future, because what we are losing and what's that threat is forever. And additionally, in my day job at Indigenous Climate Action, I'm the climate leadership coordinator. So I've been with the team for 2.5 years now, almost 3. And I see in the chat, our website is, I think, been linked. But we at the Indigenous Climate Action, we believe that Indigenous people's rights and knowledge systems are critical to developing solutions to the climate crisis and achieving climate justice. And we do this through providing resources and tools. And one of them is the Climate Leadership Program, which is a popular education style community workshop by and for Indigenous people that positions our rights as a primary solution to the climate crisis. And I'm pleased to say that we are going to be hosting our next online training, June 7th to 9th. If you would like to sign up, please keep an eye on our website and social media. And we delve into, again, those root causes of climate change, how they're impacting our communities, our knowledge on it, and we look to solutions to them. And lastly, I want to say that these climate solutions that we're talking about, they need to fundamentally be about healing. And we can't rely on market-based mechanisms and other so-called solutions that are providing a crutch for industry to continue to exist. And it's about, again, bringing that balance back and doing what we need to do to let the land heal. I think with that, I went a little bit over time, but thank you again. And thank you to my panelists, and I'll pass it off.
Thank you so much, Carol, for that very inspiring presentation, very thorough. And also, as you said, the links to both of the organizations you mentioned are in the chat for folks. And of course, we'll post them again after this webinar. So it's great that people can follow up and learn more about the inspiring work you're doing. And also, I really appreciate you talking about the healing aspect of this work, because it is a struggle, but it's also important that we have healing within the struggle. So thank you for mentioning that. And something that we've been hearing from a lot of our Indigenous sisters from Amiga, which is based in Brazil. They've been really sharing this message about reforesting our minds. And I really love that, you know, in the context of decolonization, but also like this way of like, what are we reforesting? Yes, we want to reforest the land, but also our hearts and minds. So thank you for that great presentation and the beautiful work you're doing. And now I'd like to hand the floor to Judy Kipkenda. The floor is yours, Judy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. My name is Judy Kipkenda. I come from Kenya in Africa. I come from a small indigenous community known as Ogiek people. We are a hunter-gatherer community traditionally, and we belong, or our ancestral home is the Mau Forest Complex, which is the biggest water tower here in Kenya. Mau Forest has been our home for generations. We are a community that is intertwined with the forest. We rely on the forest for food. We rely on it for medicine, shelter, and even our own cultural identity. However, there's been a lot of deforestation, a lot of illegal logging, and so the climate crisis is now threatening our way of life. As a young person, I have lived it, because a lot of deforestation started from the moment I was born. That is when the government of Kenya evicted us. So basically, I'm just speaking, I want to be very specific. I want to speak on deforestation because the rest of the topics, deforestation is what applies to me. We do not have mining in my community, so it is deforestation. I'm just being specific so that you don't wonder why I'm talking about deforestation. So the Kenyan government started evicting and forcefully displacing my community around the year 1987, 1988, which is around the years that I was born, just before I was born. And it has brought a lot of devastating impacts within our community, for my people and for our territory, our land. We've lost a lot of biodiversity. The deforestation has shrinked our hunting grounds, reduced our access to medicinal plants that we depend for medicine, and it has disrupted the delicate balance of the ecosystem that we rely on for honey production. Honey is a very important food for us as Ogiek people, and we are known in this country, in my country, Kenya, we are known as the honey people. It has also brought disruption to microclimates. The Mau forest ecosystem plays a very big role when it comes to regulating local temperatures and rainfall patterns within Mau and neighboring areas. So deforestation has led to a lot of unpredictable weathers. Again, the other devastating impact that we've seen is cultural erosion. Our forest, our home, is very important to us because apart from just being our home, we tag or we peg our spirituality onto it. When we bury our elders, we plant some certain type of trees. Now, when these trees are cut down, we feel like our connection between us and our elders gets disrupted. The deforestation weakens our cultural identity and our cultural fabric. It has also led to a lot of conflicts over the land, because as competition for scarce resources intensified, conflict arises a lot between us, our neighboring communities, and even the government, to keep evicting and displacing people. I mean, because when they blame us for deforesting, for cutting down trees, which is not really true. And now it has brought a lot of conflict between us and the government, to a point we had to sue the government over the rights of our land. What are we as youth, we as Ogiek youth, we as youth here in Kenya, Indigenous youth here in Kenya, what are we doing? So despite all these hardships and all the trauma that we are going through as Indigenous youth, because it is very traumatic when you see the government taking your home and not giving an alternative or any sort of compensation. The only thing that we have been left with is relying on our ancestral knowledge and just keep championing for self-determination to create our own solutions. So one of the solutions that we have as Ogiek youth is that we are trying to revive our traditional practices, like sustainable honey harvesting and forest management techniques. And these are knowledges that have been passed down to us by our forefathers, our grandparents. And it holds a lot of valuable insights for conservation. The other thing that we're doing, we are advocating for our rights to manage our ancestral land by ensuring our voices are heard in decision-making tables when it comes to decisions that affect our future. Because in as much as you're talking about climate change and all that, it is us, the youth, the young people, who are going to feel the brunt of this climate change even worse or even more than the elders. The other solution we are doing, we are raising a lot of awareness about the this proportionate impact of climate change on Indigenous communities, and we are calling for global action to address climate injustice. And on that same note, we are doing a lot of restoration for the degraded forest blocks within our territories by ensuring we plant indigenous tree species that supports our livelihoods, which is one of them is the beekeeping, because as I've mentioned, the honey is our most important food, the medicines, and the soap, and henceforth. The last solution that I'd like to mention is like here in Kenya, we have a very strong network of Kenya Indigenous Youth Network, which I'm one of the conveners. And in our main focus over the last 3 years has been on climate education. We keep recruiting more young Indigenous youth to train them on climate education, just to teach them on adaptation, mitigation, and what can they do to contribute towards climate action. And just to mention, I've been the African focal point for the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus, and my term ends in this session. One of the most important things that I used that position for was making sure that I initiated an African Indigenous Youth Network, whereby also our main focus is on climate change. We are trying to preach this gospel all over the continent, so that it is not only the small efforts that we're doing in Kenya or within my community, but we spread these actions to the rest of the countries in Africa, so that we can have a collective, tangible actions. So this fight for Ogiek is not just for us, but for the entire planet. Healthy forests are very crucial in regulating the climate, storing carbon, and maintaining biodiversity, which are crucial for our own survival. We are not only safeguarding our future, but we are contributing to a healthier planet for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Judy, for your presentation and for your incredible leadership. It's very, very inspiring to hear all that you've done and the networks that you're have already generated. And my guess is once you move out of position, we're just going to be seeing more and more of you with the incredible expertise and skills that you have. And thank you for sharing your story with us. WeCan actually works in the Democratic Republic of Congo on reforestation, and we have a similar story with the community that we work with there. So yeah, it's such a big fight. I just want you to know our heart and our minds are really with you and support you. It's a very devastating, the kinds of land grabs that are going on, and the deforestation is massive. And I just really honor all the work that you're doing, the inspiration that you have, and the fact of the youth reforesting. And yeah, it's just a very, very powerful story. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to continuing with you. And we have shared your things, your information in the links in the chat. And yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And I have to just say on another note, I'm very intrigued with people who have their traditional ecological knowledge and culture based on honey and bees. That probably is an amazing conversation for another point, but just to mention the beauty of you sharing that with us. Thank you. And now we're going to hear from Morgan Brings Plenty. You have the floor, Morgan. Thank you.
Always going in Matiapi, Tantinape Washte the happy, always going in Matiapi. Morgan brings an American in Matiapi, Wamblipaha LTP. Hello, my name is Morgan Brings Plenty. My Lakota name is White Earring Woman, and I'm from Eagle Butte, South Dakota, from on Cheyenne River, and I greet you all with a heartfelt handshake. A lot of my work revolves around fighting against pipelines, including Dakota Access. And I'm here at the United Nations Permanent Forum with the Standing Rock Youth Council. We gave an intervention regarding the issue happening in Standing Rock and Cheyenne River. I have been a part of the Ochete Shakowin runners and the whole Ochete Shakowin movement since the very beginning in 2016. At the very start, it was my mother, my late mother, Joy Braun, who was the very first camper over at Standing Rock. At the time, it was Sacred Stone Camp. It was very small. And then it grew into the amazing movement that we had and brought together with all the water protectors around the world. And it's amazing to see all that with all the allyships that we created and held together with our sisters and our brothers, respecting our rights, our human rights, our land rights, our treaty rights, and so forth. So what a lot of people don't know about DAPL is that we're still in the fight. Many of the people have forgotten that and DAPL has been going on. Yes, Dakota Access went through, and we the funny part is with Dakota Access is that we had won like 6 times, but the pipeline still went through, running illegally on our territory, on our treaty lands. So it's kind of, well, to say stupid in a way, because we won, but the oil is still running through. Because like Biden administration and many other leaders said to shut it down completely, but still with Energy Transfer Partners, who is this pipeline that goes under, still going through with the oil. And we had heard that the amount of barrels that come from this oil pipeline is another 5,000 more barrels than what was preceded with the Army Corps of Engineers. So within our fight, that the Dakota Access Pipeline is on unceded treaty territory. And what unceded treaty territory is that it's land that we never gave up. It's land that still belongs to the tribal nations, the great Ochete Shakowin, the 7 nations. So we're still fighting for that because it is illegal, and it broke our Fort Laramie Treaty, and it broke water rights acts. It broke many laws, and yet somehow it was still allowed to go through. So with the Standing Rock Youth Council, we have been bringing up this issue for 8 years now, since it's been through 8 years in this long fight. And I know, like, for us, we're never going to give up. Like, we're going to foresee it to be shut down. And what's going on right now is that with the environmental impact statement, there was a draft that was at the beginning of the year. And they had asked, like, oh, we can send public comments. And so we push that out onto our socials and as much as possible to try to stop this. So with our tribal entities, our community members, our grassroots, our youth had put a ton of comments, and it's a lot. Like Rishi said that about over 10,000, 20,000. I forget the approximate number, but like I know it was generally like a lot of people who oppose this particular pipeline to try to get it shut down with the Army Corps of Engineers. And we have been told that the environmental impact statement is to be complete by December of this year, 2024. But Standing Rock and tribal nations have been told that it would be complete in September 2024. So I feel like we're being played in a way because we don't know exactly when the environmental impact statement is to be completed. But we have been told we're given options to say what we wanted to do with the pipeline. And we told the Army Corps of Engineers, shut it down, drain of all oil, and cap it. Because right now, like if you try to take out that pipe, it's going to disrupt the nature around it, the natural biology that's around it. Like right now, like what grew around it since the original disruption of our sacred lands and throughout the whole area. Other than fighting against Dakota Access Pipeline, we have been fighting against CCS pipelines, missing and murdered Indigenous relatives, the Two-Spirit activism to make sure our rights are heard as well as a Two-Spirit. So we've been going along like everywhere just to say like, hey, we're human, we have rights, we deserve to live. And it's like amazing to connect like with other youth like here at the United Nations Permanent Forum, and I love seeing all the youth together and like speaking out their rights, what they deserve, because like we do deserve clean air, we do deserve clean water, and we do deserve our land rights. We don't deserve to be pushed out. We don't deserve to be killed over what, greed. And because like that's what these big corporations or these people are, is just mainly greed. So I'll check there.
Wow, thank you so much, Morgan. Really, really appreciate you taking time with us. And I'm so glad you're here in New York and you had the opportunity to make an intervention on the floor. That's really amazing that you're able to do that. And at the same time, I know that the intervention was happening. There was that rally on the street that we were participating in, to bring attention to the fact, as you said, that this fight is not over. It's not over. So I'm so glad that you're here and highlighting that and visibilizing that, because a lot of these fights, they go on, and we have to stay so that there really is forward motion. And I really appreciate you also sharing with us that, that you won over and over again, and yet the oil still flows. And so I think one of the collective things that, we are, really pushing for while we're here, but throughout, year in and year out, is why is FPIC not being respected? If Indigenous people say no, no has to be no. This is a violation of international law. And I think we've all had it up to here with the fact that governments are not respecting Indigenous people's rights. And all these illegal pipelines are going, land grabs, and it's the government, it's financial institutions, it's corporations. So thank you for your incredible leadership, that you have. The Standing Rock Youth Council, I think, stole beautifully all of our hearts. It's just been amazing what you all have done, and you were a runner This was a fight that went global because of your leadership. And here you are continuing on. And I want you to know that we love you, we support you, we look up to you, and we know we know that you carry the tradition of your amazing mother, Joy Braun, who we hold in such great esteem, and you carry that legacy and that voice. And please know we're here for you. We've put all your information in the chat, and thank you for your endurance and power and strength through a really tough time. It's tough. So thank you for being here, and we really appreciate your voice. And now I'm going to hand the floor to Pema Wangmo Lama. You have the floor, Pema.
Thank you so much. And first of all, I'd like to thank KOWYN for organizing this virtual side event by bringing together Indigenous youth and really appreciating our contributions as well as our work in the community. So I completely resonate with my fellow panelists who have already shared that the climate change that's happening, we have had no hands in making this happen. But however, we are the ones facing these impacts really at the forefront. And that is, we know this is because of colonization and how all the developed countries and even our states are implementing development initiatives like it's not their business. It's like it's just a method of earning more. It's just developing it, not humanity at the sake. So that's been happening in the developed countries as well as in the developing countries like Nepal as well. So because of that, despite we have no hand in it, we are facing those impacts. And especially in Nepal, in our communities, what we are facing is development is being rampant. We are not taking care of how is that affecting our communities. And then even today, we are not just facing the impacts of climate change as the way climate change happens, but also because of climate actions that our states have been implementing. Like you can see conservation initiatives that has been affecting our communities from their ancestral lands. There are hydropower projects that's supposed to be promoting green energy, but that's really destroying our livelihoods, destroying our lifeways. That is destroying our communities, their access to, resources like fish, like water, forest, and a lot of those things. And because of that, our communities are not just directly facing those impacts, but they are also losing their knowledge. They are also losing their connection, their spiritual connection to their land. And because of that, as a youth, it's not just our future in stake, but it's also all the knowledge that has to be handed over to us through our land, through our territories, through our resources that are also being at stake. We are not getting those knowledge transferred with us. So because of that, as a youth, as we as Indigenous youth, we are also facing multiple kind of, multifaceted impacts of climate change. And when we are talking about our rights as an Indigenous people, in regards to climate change, Indigenous peoples, in a lot of cases, right now, we are also within UNFCCC, we're recognized as a major groups. However, when we see every year, every COP, we see the decisions, our representation in those decisions are only tokenistic. They're only recognizing us because science has already science has already told the facts that Indigenous peoples are the key. So that's why we only see very tokenistic representation of Indigenous people in these decisions. However, when it comes to their implementation, we are always lagging behind. Indigenous peoples are always Indigenous people, Indigenous youth, especially Indigenous women. They are always behind. They are never in those decision-making spaces when those are implemented at national level. And even the Paris Agreement has said it. The KOWYN Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework has said it, that Indigenous knowledge is the key. And when we also see policies that are made at national level, the plans that are being implemented at national and local level, especially within our communities, our knowledges are being used as commodities. Our knowledge is being used to, combat climate change. But then our rights are not recognized. Our right to our autonomy to our land, territories, and resources are not recognized. They are not recognizing our collective rights. And right now, as we come from this movement, as we are all coming together in this united permanent forum for Indigenous issues, we also have to come together and demand states to not just consider Indigenous people as, key to combat climate change, but also recognize our rights. And when they recognize our rights, when they give us the autonomy to control our land and territories, we are going to be the one protecting our nature. We are going to be the one conserving our forest, our land, our water, our soil, our air. So I think as Indigenous youth, as also, we are, we're not just at the risk. Our future is not only at risk, we are also not getting those Indigenous knowledge transferred. And as Indigenous youth, we are really, pushing forward, like, to have this generational transfer of knowledge, which is very important. Because as our ancestors has been, protecting these lands despite all this interventions from states and other non-state actors, we as Indigenous youth also are ready to take that responsibility ahead. But there are a lot of barriers and challenges to do that. And I think it is very important that we need to recognize these challenges that are coming forth in transferring this knowledges, transferring these traditional practices, and really push our Indigenous youth to take that leadership, to really push our leaders, our elders, our mothers, our relatives to share their knowledge, to really bring Indigenous youth into their movements as well. I'd like to share my screen and just show some of the work that me and my organization have been doing at the community level. So everyone can see my screen, right? Okay.
Yes.
So as our organization, my organization is called National Indigenous Women's Federation. So our organization are doing a lot of activities targeting Indigenous So there have been a lot of activities going on targeting Indigenous youth and really trying to bring our Indigenous youth who have been away from their Indigenous land, who have been away from territories and their knowledges, and bringing these kind of dialogues and interaction between our elders as well as our younger generations. And we are also doing a lot of activities using tools like digital storytelling, like social media campaigning, to really connect to these kind of generations. And besides that, we are also co-learning and building capacities with their communities as Indigenous youth who also have this knowledge, this technical and scientific knowledges about how climate change works. Our communities does not have those kind of knowledges. So we are also bridging these gaps that our communities does not have, which is like this scientific, all the science, all the greenhouse gases, and all the scientific facts like that. We're really trying to connect those knowledges and informations with our indigenous languages in ways that our community understands, so that we build the capacity of community to really connect it with their local governments, with their local stakeholders, to claim their rights, to claim their to claim resources that are available to them to ensure their activities. And then another way we are doing this is by embracing our identities and also by embracing our knowledges, and ensuring that our communities are also doing their part of work to transfer these knowledges to their youth, and also ensuring that youths who are really in the spaces, like there are numerous Indigenous youth who are already into the climate activism, but they are not connected to their Indigenous knowledges as well. So we're also focusing on that and those aspects as well. And then we are also demanding spaces within our Indigenous people, within our Indigenous movement as well, and within the larger youth movement, and within the larger climate movement as well. We are demanding our spaces, we are demanding our voices to be heard, and we are also demanding that our demands and our voices needs to be within the paper as well as in the actions. And then we are also doing a lot of policy advocacy with various levels of governments, with national and local governments, to ensure that their plans and policies reflect Indigenous demands. And we are also doing a lot of resistance within our communities against state actions as well as non-state actions, which are majorly in terms of conservation initiatives that are happening in our community, a lot of land grabbing and eviction happening in our communities. And then finally, we are co-creating spaces with my fellow Indigenous youths. So as I'm sharing all this information and all the solutions, these solutions are not just my own. It's by the collective actions of all the Indigenous youth who are coming together to address these challenges and to address these issues that we are facing today. And it's also from the support of our elders who have really paved this spaces for us as Indigenous youth to come into these spaces and say what we have to say. So these are some of the solutions that we have been implementing in our communities, which have really turned out to be very influential in bringing our communities' voices with various actors and also bringing together our collective efforts and collective solidarity to combat this, a huge challenge such as climate change within national, local, as well as global level. And now this is the time. We are like at the very peak of this climate crisis. And if we do not do actions right now, if we do not take this responsibility right now, if not by us, then we have no other options. Our future is really at stake. So we should really take this collective actions and collective force, bridging all the generations, not just Indigenous youth, our Indigenous elders, our young children's, and bringing together this knowledge, bringing together this energy to take forward the movement and really combat climate crisis together. Thank you everyone for listening, and thank you Weekend for giving this space as well.
Thank you so much, Pema, for your powerful presentation and the incredible work that you and your community are doing. It's really quite something and quite comprehensive. I also really appreciate you sharing your full analysis with us and calling things out as they are, and also really highlighting the fact that we are in urgent times and the response that you and your community and the youth leaders are doing in response to this critical moment. It's so important that we don't forget the timeline we're in and what this means to the youth and all of you, which is so critical, calling out for urgent action and change and offering the solutions that you do. And lastly, just to say, really appreciate you pointing out this, sort of typical capitalistic view of, great, we love your traditional ecological knowledge, but we won't give you rights. So thank you for pointing that out. I'm sure we could take an hour on that topic or more, but we will move on to our next speaker. But thank you very much for your powerful work. All of Pema's information is in the chat. And now I would be very honored to bring Sheila Barefoot into the conversation. Sheila, you have the floor. Thank you. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, that's perfect, because I think I mispronounced something. Ahehe, Yagode, Shisha, Sheila Barefoot, Shaha Hishuna Guka Ende, Shima, Inda Listok, Shita, Chita Ende. So thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Sheila Barefoot. I am Chiricahua Apache. The term we call ourselves, Ishuna Guka Ende, means sunrise people. My mom is white and my dad is Apache. So I actually grew up displaced from traditional lands in Tracy, California. My dad actually ran away from home when he was 12 because my grandmother, who had been forced into boarding school, better called child torture camps, ended up replicating a lot of abuse. And when he ran away, he was basically kidnapped, and that's a whole long story. But in any case, due to various aspects of colonial violence, I have grown up distanced from my peoples, and a lot of the intergenerational trauma that my dad endured has served as a gatekeep in his way to passing down traditional knowledge, because of both the trauma associated with it. I think one of the things we don't talk about enough is when we are reclaiming our cultures and we're going to elders or other people who have directly experienced the colonial violence that has been done to exterminate our cultures and our people, that's extremely traumatic for them. So that in and of itself becomes a barrier to learning traditional knowledge. Additionally, my dad kind of wanted to hold what little bit he had over me as a way to kind of make himself feel better. And it was just kind of a little bit of a messed up tactic. But in any case, I say all of that to just kind of give full transparency on my positionality, and also because I want to make kind of set the ground and make some space for people that I want to give a shout out to who have helped me on my journey, because a lot of my connection with my indigeneity has actually happened as an adult. So I once had someone tell me, I hope you never win a national award or something, because you're going to take forever and thank everybody. So I'm giving a little bit of a cutoff on the thank yous. This is specifically going to be for folks who have helped me on my way in UC Berkeley's various Native American programs, the American Indian Graduate Program, Native American Recruitment and Retention, and then the Native American Health Center in San Francisco. So, in no particular order except loosely chronological, I really want to give a shout out to Fenosha Barlow, who is Apsaloke, Carmen Foghorn, who is Oslita Pueblo and Dene, now Dr. Olivia Chilcote, who is Lasano and San Luis Rey Band of Mission Indians, Dr. Beth Payatote, who is Namipu, Bridget Nakone, who is Acoma Pueblo, Dr. Marquis, who is Dene, Chumash, and Ohlone, Dr. Okima, who is Kickapoo, Michelle Moss, who is Anishinaabe, Miriam Long, and then Susan Reese Mashiki, who is Haudenosaunee. So if I missed anyone, apologies, you all know who you are. I just wanted to give a little bit of a shout out to the folks who served as my aunties and uncles when colonial violence prevented my blood family from doing so. In any case, that has set my groundwork for the areas in which I try to advocate for Indigenous peoples. I would definitely consider myself more of an advocate than an activist, because I do a lot of work behind the scenes, I feel like, and have kind of gotten my start in Native American healthcare and Indigenous health disparities. I spent a couple years working at the Native American Health Center in San Francisco, in which I did a lot of diabetic education and then referral coordination. So getting people out to see specialists. And I had previously been like really gung-ho, I'm going to be a doctor. And then after speaking with a bunch of doctors working there and seeing how frustrated they were just kind of sending patients back out into the same environments that caused them to be sick in the first place, systems that are only there because of settler colonialism, that made me start thinking about going into public health and working. In particular, I have an interest in toxins and endocrine disrupting chemicals, which, as we all know, as Indigenous peoples, we are disproportionately exposed to various forms of toxins. And not only are we disproportionately exposed to toxins, we're disproportionately exposed to a whole cocktail that are not being taken into consideration when colonial institutions like the EPA are setting limits for what is considered a quote unquote safe standard. I mean, first off, none of it's safe. But secondly, they're not taking into account the synergistic impacts that we face from all of the various different health issues that we have as Indigenous peoples. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to study environmental health, that's where I got my master's at Hopkins. Shout out to everyone at Native Circle and Hopkins, and in particular, Dr. Brittany Jock and Kiana Kaleakini. So one of the reasons why I wanted to get my degree in that, and why I got my undergrad degree at Berkeley in genetics and plant biology, is because of a colonial narrative that paints Indigenous peoples as genetically and medically inferior. There is a lot of medical victim blaming that goes on within our communities, trying to blame health issues that we have exclusively on either having faulty genetics or having a lack of moral strength and character, and that is why that is part of why we suffer. And that's really not the case. I got so enraged all the time when I was younger reading all of these publications and all of these reports that would talk about like, oh, Native Americans have 4 times the risk of diabetes, Native Americans have 5 times the risk of heart disease, and all of that is true and important, but it kept talking about our bodies like we're ticking time bombs and not in any way taking into account these systems that have made it so, not in any way taking into account the fact that trauma and exposure to environmental toxins changes our very epigenetics. And the difference between epigenetics and like regular genetics, I won't get too much into that because I've only got 7 minutes and that's like a whole university course. But part of why that distinction is important is because epigenetics and what impacts our DNA on that level is predominantly environmental toxins and other forms of trauma, even, psychological trauma that has been passed down, because that has a very real physical manifestation on our bodies. It quite literally changes the structure of your DNA. They can't argue that this is just in our heads. They can't argue that this is something faulty with our cultures. There is hard physical evidence of what colonialism has done to our peoples and what we still continue to survive. So that is part of why I really wanted to go into science, because it's been used as a tool against Indigenous peoples. So when I was a teenager, I was like, I'm so mad about this. I am so tired. I am going to go into these rooms and I am going to learn the language that people are using to oppress us. I am going to get better at their systems than they are. So when I tell them what they're doing is wrong and harmful, they will know that I already passed their standards of accreditation. It's not just me coming from the very valid parts of my Indigenous knowledge and my experience, but that it's also from like their own standards. Like they can't argue against that. I mean, they still do, but at least I can tell them it's not even science. So one of the things that I really want to do, and I realize I haven't even talked about what I'm doing currently, but it gets there. This is going to be a non-linear story. One of the things that I really want to do and what I'm kind of preparing to go back to school for and hopefully get a PhD in, because I've realized I can't really do this otherwise without going back into other forms of education, is I want to look into interventions to mitigate the negative health impacts that happen from exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals, which include diabetes, which include obesity. Like there's chemical processes that are again frequently blamed as moral failings on Indigenous peoples or Indigenous cultures. And it's like, no, this is actually due to exposure to PCBs and organotins and tributyltin and all of these other chemicals that are only used by colonial institutions. I mean, heck, organotins were predominantly used as a molicide, and now they bioaccumulate in marine mammals and fish, and then, Indigenous peoples eat them and they bioaccumulate in us and are passed down through our breast milk, which the fact that at the rate where you're talking about toxins being passed down through breast milk, I generally don't like to romanticize different parts of reproduction and childbearing. But if you are just trying to breastfeed your child, and that in and of itself is causing toxins to be passed into their infant bodies, that should be a crime against humanity. And I cannot believe that I really can't believe that it isn't. So in order to do some work on mitigating the negative health impacts of that, I probably really need to go back to school to study more on endocrine disruptors and hopefully at least be a person in the room that believes in the inherent dignity of Indigenous peoples. Sorry, I know I'm going over time. Okay, quick wrap up on what I'm doing now. So last year I went to COP28 as part of a delegation of a Wisdom Keepers delegation of Indigenous peoples from around the world. I currently do a lot of contract work, so I was doing some organizing for that. I'm planning the Indigenous People Summit in 2024 and was on the planning committee for the Indigenous People Summit last year, which is being held in concert with the Kahnawake Maya and the Omaha Nation. They have a mutual government-to-government ambassadorship. And then finally, most recently, and what I'm technically representing here, I am the Environmental Health and Justice Program Manager at Poetry for Planet, and I'm extremely excited to continue working in that. So yes, thank you for bearing with me, and thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Sheila. Wow, just really great to, we've gotten to know each other, but I didn't know a lot of the history that you just shared with me. Really, really exciting. And yeah, thank you for pointing out so deeply the health issues that you did and the entire colonized view of Indigenous people's bodies in context to modernity and the settler colonial structures. It's really important work, and I'm really excited to hear that you'll be continuing on that work and all the incredible work you're doing. So thank you very much for your leadership, and really appreciate you also sharing with us, you know, the impacts that we're seeing and how the way that you describe how we can internalize that we're doing something wrong or Indigenous people are somehow inherently not healthy. And I think that that's very powerful for you to be pointing that out to all of us. Thank you. Thank you so much for that work. And now I would like to hand over the floor to Ele, and I'm going to very humbly let you say your last name because I don't want to ruin it twice in a row. So I hand the floor to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Kiitos, thank you. Puhdespurkide munamale Elrauna Näkkäjärvi. My name is Elrauna Näkkäjärvi. I am the chair of the Sami Parliament's Youth Council on the Norwegian side of Sápmi, and I am also in the board of the Norwegian Sami Association's Youth Council, and also in the board sort of or group that organized the FOSEN protests in Oslo last year. I want to thank my sister panelists for your words. It's been powerful and good to hear about your both struggles and solutions, and I really appreciate it. This, of course, is a really broad theme, and there is a lot to be talked about when it comes to climate change and solutions. And of course, I would like to recognize all of the battles that's been going on both in Sápmi and in the indigenous world. I'm going to be focusing on green colonialism in Sápmi, because that's kind of one of the most urgent matters that we have in Sápmi and that I'm involved in. Green colonialism is a word that I think fits well because it both talks about the burden of the climate change and how these solutions are being brought as solutions for the climate change, but then also taking away from our lands, and this because the government comes up with these solutions or so-called solutions. We as youth in Sápmi, we don't have time to act. We don't have time to come up with the solutions to restore and to heal our lands and our waters, but we have to spend our time reacting to what the government decides over our lands and waters. And I wanted to show this picture because this is Storheia in Fosen. Fosen is in the South Sami area, and this is one of their most important grazing lands for reindeer herds. So this is their winter grazing lands, or used to be, before these companies came and built the wind power parks on their lands. These wind turbines are a couple 100 meters tall, with these, of course, rotating blades. And when you are up there for a few hours, you really feel it on your body, like all the what the rotating turbines do to you, and that makes it quite easy to understand perhaps why reindeer herding and wind power cannot coexist. The reindeer won't go into areas that have this. So the reindeer herders of Fosen have been fighting this issue for 20 years, and in 2021, the 11th of October, they won in Norway Supreme Court with a unanimous verdict that said that these turbines violate human rights. And this, of course, was a huge win for us in Sápmi, because I think most indigenous people know that it's not every day that you win in these colonial states and colonial kind of court systems. But the Fosen Sámi won, and we were waiting for something to happen, but nothing did. So on the 1-year anniversary of the verdict in 2022, me and my board in the youth or the association, we started posting like this campaign on social media, basically just counting how many days Norway has been violating human rights. And of course, Norway is this so-called human rights paradise where you wouldn't maybe think that something like this would happen. And then for when it had gone 500 days of human rights violations, me and 19 other activists, we walked into the Norwegian Ministry of Oil and Energy, and we occupied it. And this was supposed to last for 1 day. We had a few demands. We wanted the land to be given back to the reindeer herders and the turbines to be taken down. And this kind of protest, they let us stay in there for the weekend, and it just grew and grew and grew. And what started as a protest of 20 people ended up being 2,000 people by the end of the week, as we see in the next picture. So yeah, a lot of people came to support us from all across Sápmi, also allies, non-Samis, from other indigenous peoples came. So this was a very important thing for us, and we had this protest for the like twice that year, also in the summer and in October, where we shed light on this issue. And during this first week of protests, it was the first time that Norway ever admitted that it was a human rights violation. And this shows the importance of youth speaking up and coming up with calling the states out on their double morality. And Norway, of course, likes to give out funding and money for people to work with climate solutions, but then violating human rights back home. So what now? With Fosen, they have an agreement that is supposed to that basically means that in 2045 the turbines can be taken down, which is going to be a day of celebration for us. For our sake, we went to court. We got fined for this protest. We went to court. Last week, we got the verdict. We got acquitted, all of us, which of course is also a big unexpected victory. And I think in terms of like solutions, we need capacity building. We need more economic resources to work on this, but we also need human resources. There's not that many of us, which is why alliances like with the Young Friends of the Earth in Norway, alliances with them, for example, is so important, because we can't stand in this fight alone, which of course indigenous people do for the whole rest of the world as well. Of course, we need self-determination. We need states to actually respect free, prior, and informed consent, which Norway does not yet. And we need to be the one who manage and to actually heal the lands, because we know the lands and we respect the lands, which I do not feel that these states actually do. Yeah, and just like here in the Permanent Forum, youth are the future. That comes with a lot of responsibility to act and to be in places where decisions are being made, but also responsibility to learn the culture, which is why for me it is important to spend time back home in reindeer herding, learning traditional duachi handicraft, because it is the most sustainable, one of the most sustainable ways of living, making duachi. But also I think it's important to spend time in your lands and with the elders, because that's how we preserve knowledge and language. And yeah, and just again, there is power in numbers. I think we as Indigenous youth have to come together, and that's how we are able to overcome the challenges and actually make the states listen to what we have to say. So yeah, I just I'm gonna stop there. I'm a bit over time, but thank you a lot for arranging this side event. Yeah.
Wow, wonderful, Ella, and congratulations on an incredible campaign and a victory, which I'm sure was so much work that you could take hours sharing with us all that happened. But it's extraordinary and very inspiring to see how you organized, how the youth came together, and that you won. It's tremendous. And as you say, it goes on, and there's so much more support needed. And I hope that, more people hearing your story and the work that you're doing, there'll be more support for your activism and calls to action. And I think you bring something forward that I want to just highlight before we go to our last speaker, which is, as we have been discussing all week here at the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, but certainly when we are at the climate talks annually and throughout the year, there has got to be a respect for Indigenous rights and Indigenous sovereignty in the transition. And so you bring forward this key point, which is we're all talking about the just transition and moving off of fossil fuels into clean energy, but we really need to, as you all know very well, I'm just sharing this out loud, you all know this very well, that it must be done with human rights, Indigenous rights, and ecological integrity in the forefront. So we don't just go from one form of extractivism and damage to Indigenous rights and to the earth to a new form that is based on, the continuing the colonial capitalist structure. And so the whole issue around these wind turbines is such a powerful example of, not one more time as we perpetuate white supremacy and perpetuate systems as usual and endless economic growth, who gets harmed in that process. We cannot allow that. So I really appreciate you bringing it forward, because people need to understand the nuances of what is going on here. And I'll just also mention, I know those of you who are here, but also in your communities, are really trying to highlight that as we move off of fossil fuels, we cannot replicate the same extractive economy and now go after transition minerals on, again, Indigenous lands and create more toxins, more pollution to water, et cetera, in this transition. So I know this is a huge topic and how we navigate that, but I just wanted to, lift up what you said so importantly, which is, what is the just transition? What does it look like? And the fact that we can't repeat the same old systems, because that's not a solution. I'll leave it at that. And yes, thank you so much. And it's really inspiring to see your work. We will go to Tylee Landry now. You have the floor. And just so the other speakers know, we do have a moment we can just go around and give you all final comments, because I know when you hear each other, maybe you want to make it, but they'll have to be short. And just to let our audience know that Morgan brings plenty. Amazing leader, needed to go back inside the UN to go to a press conference. So she sends her greetings to all, but she needed to jump off just so that we know why she's not here. But I'm really thrilled to bring Tylee Landry online with us. We're so looking forward to hearing your presentation. Thank you.
Sabotage, thank you. Manikisek, everyone. Natasuis Talia Landry, Nu Tomas Masipi Wampanaak, Mutai Masipi. So good day, everybody. My name is Talia Landry. I come from the Mashpee Wampanoag Nation, and I currently live in Mashpee. I was born and raised in Mashpee. Mashpee Wampanoag is in Mashpee Wampanoag Nation is within Massachusetts. Our ancestral homeland goes all the way from Provincetown all the way up to Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island. We have been confined to our small territory in a small township that they call Mashpee now, as they've taken from our tribal name. We were illegally incorporated into a town in 1870 because we were Indian town or Indian plantation or settlement. As the missionaries and colonizers came over, we greeted the pilgrims as they boarded their ship on the Mayflower, and had to deal with that first contact challenges as Native American people on our indigenous homelands for a long time. So it was in 1870 we were protected, for some time because we agreed to adopt the Christianity that the missionaries were coming over because my ancestors felt that we needed to stay on our lands. And in order for us to survive as a people, we needed to move forward with doing this, but we also retained our culture and did our ceremonies and our language and practice our language in private within our households. So we were able to retain a lot, but a lot has also been lost through those efforts of, assimilation. And with that being said, a lot of what I do with myself and within the youth work that I do is within cultural revitalization. Also, inevitably brings us to the climate crisis that we have to be battling now and today. So as I mentioned before, we were, an Indian township for a long time, even after 1870. It wasn't until about 1960s or so until non-natives started to move into our town. Development happened a lot around us. The Kennedys actually brought a lot of resort people and vacationers and tourists to our homelands. And even my homeland has been separated by a man-made canal, which as of February of this year has now completely turned where Mashpee lies into a complete island. So the canal had a little bit of barriers that made us still connected, but as of February of 2024, we are no longer connected, which basically puts us in a very fragile state as we are, combating the overdevelopment, and we are currently, sinking as we speak, with the amount of people that are here within tourism, but as well as the residents that have permanently moved here, especially during the COVID epidemic in 2020. So that's just like a little background of what we face on the day-to-day. It's every single day, and it's with the first contact kind of government. As far as within America, it was the Massachusetts Bay colonies that have created this, what they call America now. And that is the government system that we have to face, being Indigenous people within that Commonwealth. So we are very much ignored. A lot of what they have to do in order to what they want to do is basically act like we don't exist. So a lot of that fight and battle has been a lot of just us saying we're still here. We didn't get our federal recognition for a very long time because we chose not to, because we were not willing to give up our Aboriginal rights. So we still attain our Aboriginal rights, unlike some of our sister tribes in the Wampanoag Nation, because they decided to go through that avenue of federal recognition and giving up some of those treaty rights that they had. So that's kind of the value system that Mashpee pertains and keeps going. And the work that I do and why I'm here today is what we have recently created, what we call the Mashpee Wampanoag Native Environmental Ambassadors. And through cultural revitalization and getting back to, our traditional skills and learning those traditional skills, we are facing the fact that we do not have our resources in the abundance that we need them, and we're not able to access those places as well because of private properties and the property laws that we have now. So the Mashpee Wampanoag Native Environmental Ambassadors are using the legal instrument of rights of nature and through the Mashpee Wampanoag tribal sovereignty to try and push these efforts to protect our natural relatives. So we're first starting within our campaign is the rights of herring, because herring are very important to us. They're depleting very rapidly, and not only from overdevelopment, but from commercial fishing, as well as just the way that the structures like fish ladders have been built in order for their passage to get to their spawning place. So obviously that was done because of overdevelopment within the need to create roads and to create more houses. They had to, make these natural things in order for the passages for our natural relatives, which at that time, they don't they don't have the traditional ecological knowledge to be doing these sort of interventions for our natural beings. So, as well as what all of my sister relatives have been saying on this call is that, we're not having that voice at the table, and they're seeing the repercussions to that now. And now that they're ready, they're still being apprehensive of as far as how far that goes. So they're willing to speak to us and maybe co-manage, but for that push of within our sovereignty to gain that access and control back, to have the authority to actually, fix these runs and fix the natural habitats around has been very hard and difficult. So the youth are leading that way within this rights of nature initiatives through the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, and creating rights of nature laws to enact through the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, so we can push that sovereignty and go to, the local officials that have responsibility over our natural resources. So, within the state, within the federal government, and within the township. So this is relatively new for us as a nation, but so a lot of it is educating not only our community, but the local community, the non-native community, of what rights of nature is. And it's, like I said before, it's really an instrument and like a translation for our traditional values to be translated into that Western value system. So for us, it's very easy to grasp the concept of rights of nature, but sometimes it's difficult for the non-native perspective to grasp it, especially even coming from an Indigenous person, because they already have their, stereotypes and ideals of what they feel like Indigenous people are saying when they are talking. So they already have an idea of what you're saying before you can even get the message out there. So the youth are really spearheading the education when it comes within the rights of nature, because they're also learning, why these natural relatives are so important to us and their place within that system. And at the same time of learning that, they're seeing the lack of the environment that they need to thrive in that ecosystem. So it's really a passion project within our youth and our community, and it's connecting our culture keepers and our elders to our young people, because there has been a far disconnect, especially with the COVID epidemic. And because we are really in that forefront of the front line of assimilation, and having to live in 1 foot in a moccasin and 1 foot in a shoe, it's hard to differentiate the colonization and really breaking that psyche and education system, even within our own body and our own community. So educating within the youth is really spearheading this movement, and it's allowing there to be hope, and the future leaders are really structuring, what our government is going to be focusing on. So that's what it's really important for us to keep that focus as far as with fighting for our herring and within this climate crisis, because without doing that, we're not going to be able to exercise our traditional skills or our ceremonies for much longer. Our climate crisis is huge within our front lines just here in Mashpee. So we focus a lot of our efforts as far as doing a lot of, education and like policy making for townships and state, and doing a lot of education or speaking engagements and co-management kind of conversations within that aspect, because what we're facing here is really detrimental to our environment and to our culture and us as a being. So we do a lot of our activities here as far as creating our laws through the tribal nation, but then we're also, getting out there and, cleaning up the rivers and replanting a lot of our indigenous plants, so we can reintroduce that natural habitat to Mashpee again, and we can get back up to where we need to. Another part of that project is attaining land back that is actually where we get our name. So it's surrounded by the biggest water on Cape Cod, Mississippi, and that's how we get our tribal name. So a part of my work on a day-to-day is acquiring that land from the town, because we are putting traditional Wampanoag structures up there to symbolize a traditional Wampanoag village site pre-contact of the colonizers coming over within their settlements. And this is not only for educating our tribal youth and our tribal community, but it's for educating educators, our teachers. And so we made a lot of partnerships with local districts so that they're able to come and learn from us. But this is a really big effort as well to combat, like I said, that the climate challenges that we're facing, especially with our herring. So attaining that land will allow us to access federal funding that will allow us to be able to, really recuperate that land again. We're also within that project, like I said, we're reintroducing those indigenous plants, because a lot of what we face within the pollution of our water, it has to do with impermeable surfaces. So the overdevelopment of all the roofs and the roads is creating an extreme amount of runoff that is going directly into our waters, and the waters aren't able to keep up with that amount of bacteria and nitrogen. So our ecosystems within those waters are having to deal with that. And so a lot of our fish are staying in the waters for too long rather than going back out to the sea. And then also, so they're getting confused as well. So we even seen mothers and their littles trying to go back out into the ocean around November, December, and that's way too late for them to be going. And so they're also, because they're staying in the waters too long, they're getting these lesions on them. So we're getting to a point where they're depleting as a species, but we're also not even able to endure in our indigenous foods and our sovereign within that sustainability. So it's very difficult to be able to be indigenous people and live our cultural way of life if we're forced out of all of our natural beings are being forced out. So that's just a little bit in of what we try and do. And I work with actually teenage students that put together a lot of the education and do a lot of the speaking engagement. And I work directly with them on learning a lot of within the culture, but as well as the legalities of it all and putting together those laws. So the support that we ask for is really, education. It's for, legal help, for human help, for any sort of experience. I'm learning so much just even from sitting on this panel from my, fellow panelists, and I'm really excited just to be in this room, in this space. A lot of our work is also going into different indigenous communities and working with their youth to start rights of nature initiatives, because we realized part of the colonization was disassociating us and making us unified, and doing this together within a movement is going to allow the indigenous communities to gain back that sovereignty and push back the climate crisis that we're facing today. Because what is happening to us is happening across Turtle Island. And if Turtle Island is coming together and putting these rights of nature legislations through and they're being recognized in more places, it's more likely that it's going to keep on being recognized. So that's kind of our efforts within not only our local community, but really investing in, the indigenous communities across Turtle Island and really focusing on the youth, pushing that movement, because they are, we are the future leaders, and what we do now is going to be our future of what we can do, within our culture and indigeneity. So I really tried to do that very quickly because I know we're over time, and I appreciate everybody that stayed on the call to listen to the few minutes that I did have. But I do appreciate everything that was said today. And, my heart is with everybody within our struggles, and we're all here, for within that fight. So please reach out at any point, because I've been writing down every little thing as well, so we can, make sure to check in and be there within support.
Thank you so much, Tali, for that very full presentation. You brought it all together, made it happen, and thank you for the powerful leadership that you have, and just to spell out all the different connections that you made, and also to highlight this really important work around rights of nature. I know, it's a very big topic, and I'm so glad that you brought it forward and that you're utilizing that mechanism, which of course originates in Indigenous worldviews and knowledge, as you stated. And for those who are listening in, there's lots of information about what rights of nature is. It's also work that we do at WeCan. We also have posted everything that Talia has stated, so you can learn more about how the Mashpee are utilizing the rights of nature mechanism, but I think it's so great you brought it up because it's something that we can all jump into more for all the reasons that you stated. And so I'm really glad that you highlighted that as well. I do want to take our last moment here. We are a little bit over time. If panelists have time, it's sort of nice if we could just go through you all. I'll say your name. If you could give even just like a 1 minute, and try to keep it to a minute, but it would be really great just because I know we're all popping different ideas as we're hearing each other. And so I wanted to give everyone a chance to just make a closing comment. And once again, to encourage everyone who's listening in to look at the chat so you can get connections to all of these amazing leaders and their work. Those of you who are not in the Zoom room, I know you can't see those things because you're listening in on Facebook or Instagram, but we will post this on our website and have other ways to make sure that you can collect all the information so we can support these amazing leaders. Let's face it, this is our future. The brilliance, the sheer brilliance of all of you literally has given me goosebumps sitting here listening to you, and I have to fight not crying at the same time. I mean, it's just gorgeous what you're all doing. I'd like to hand the floor to you, Carol, to see if you have any closing comment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Osprey. And now I'll go with thank you again to my co-panelists. Was definitely getting very fired up over here, listening to what you had to say and learning lots. And I think just some closing comments again, just thinking about what's been shared here. For us, everybody under the age of 35, again, like globally, have inherited this climate crisis without our consent. And we are fighting for our futures and fighting for our people and our culture and our future generations. And I think just the work that's been shared here and, the work that we do at home globally, to understand and uplift, youth engagement and our leadership, and also acknowledging the work that's come before us and the shoulders that we stand on and how we can build from that foundation. And ensuring that we're not using the same systems that have created climate change in the first place to solve them. And I think especially one thing that I was really thinking about with what Talia was talking about with the rights of nature is how often our cultural concepts have been co-opted now in the mainstream climate movement. For as Haudenosaunee, we have a concept of the rights of nature. That's what our governance system ensures for the future generations. And I see so often, terms like regenerative agriculture, permaculture, even things like zero waste, walkable cities. Our people were and are the original climate leaders. And I think it's really important for us to stand in that role, especially as young people, as women. And I think that's been about a minute, but just again, thank you so much. And just feeling very inspired by everybody and continuing on with this work, and also ensuring that we're able to do this work in a healthy way, that we're in this for the long haul, and that we are, ensuring that our health and well-being is intact as well. Like we are in this for the long haul, and our movements need to ensure that we are healing and taking care of each other as well. And making space for those coming after us as well. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Carol. Great closing comments. I hand the floor to you, Judy. Are you there, Judy? I will come back to you, Judy, if you can connect with us. As I mentioned, Morgan needed to leave to go to a press conference. Pema.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to share that I come from a Mugum indigenous community who is originally from the Himalayas, but I also am an indigenous youth who really grew up away from my own ancestral land. And the reason is just to fit in the global world, to get that education, that get formal education, and to get that access to opportunities. So coming from that background right now, I'm the spiritual connection, still the spiritual connection that I have with my land, my mother nature, my ancestral land is very strong. And I think that's the kind of conversation I have a lot of time with my fellow indigenous youth within the communities. And when we come together for the movement, a lot of times we feel kind of, we don't fit in anywhere. We don't fit in within our indigenous community. And sometimes we don't fit in the larger movement as well. So for that, I really want to share to everyone and share my experience that it's never late to, to come back to our roots. It's never late to carry on this conversation. It's never we should not, because our distance from our own knowledge, our own communities are not something that we created. It's not something we did it because we wanted to. It's something that has been, that has been pushed on our communities, that has been pushed by a lot of factors. So that's why I really want to motivate our Indigenous youth to start this conversation. Right now is the best time. Whenever you want to start is the best time. So start this conversation, start this movement to get those knowledges back from our elders, to get this kind of movement going on, get this conversation going on, and really try to give everything that you have. We don't, like, sometimes when I started in this movement, I used to see our elders and fellow youths who are really into the movement and be surprised, like, how can I start? It used to be very overwhelming. So any step that we take is very important, and any step, wherever we are in the whole world, whatever step we take is very crucial and it's important. So I'd like to really tell all the Indigenous youth and every Indigenous person, whoever is listening this, whoever will listen this in the coming future as well, to start conversation, to start connecting with other Indigenous youth that you see around yourselves, to really embrace our Indigenous identities, our knowledges, and really just take pride in whoever you are and however in the way that you embrace your identity. So that's something I really want to share this message to everyone, and build this collective movement to not just protect our identities, but also protect our common world, our earth, our mother nature. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pema. Thank you very much for that great closing comment. And we will go to Sheila.
Thank you so much. And yeah, Pema, I really want to echo a lot of what you said. Like, part of colonial violence against the land is trying to distance the land from peoples who love her. Like, I just can't feel that enough. Sorry, I'm a little bit emotional. It's rough. I mean, we all know to some extent, like, the pain of disconnection and trying to fight against all of these colonial institutions. And I also really want to echo what you were saying, like, yeah, all of these institutions want to co-opt knowledge that we already had, like Western science, Western governments, all of that is behind. They're barely catching up to Indigenous science and Indigenous knowledge. And it's really frustrating a lot of times where it's like, okay, yeah, we just want like the parts of your knowledge that make us feel good, or the parts of your knowledge that we think can be beneficial to us, and we don't want to deal with any of that, the whole part where we tried to suppress it and massacred people and made it illegal for you to practice your culture. So now you have issues trying to reinstall that. So just shout out to everyone who's doing all of this cultural revitalization work, I've just been really impressed at all the different fronts that folks on this panel are fighting colonial institutions, because they're attacking us on all sides. Like, we really do need everyone to be working in any space that they can, because if there is a space in any kind of institution, it needs to be decolonized. And we can all take part in that. And I just really want anyone who's non-Indigenous and listening to, I hope that you feel how much that this is a life or death situation for us, no matter where we are in the world, no matter the various forms of colonial violence that have shaped our current positionalities. Like, this is life or death for all of us. So I really hope that when any of you are expressing interest in our cultures and these kind of the more life-saving forms of Indigenous knowledge and care for the earth, like, don't forget that this is not going to be possible without decolonizing. We're not going to be able to implement Indigenous knowledge in institutions and through systems that are still operating in a colonial framework. Y'all need to get comfortable with the idea of decolonizing. Like, we're here to stay. You can't just take the parts that are pretty and that you like and that make you feel good. You've got to deal with all of it. We're whole people, we're whole communities, we're whole knowledge systems, and they don't exist in isolation. We're bringing all of it in here. So, yeah, I'm just really honored to be on this panel. Thank you so much to all the other warriors here doing the work.
Thank you so much, Sheila, for your powerful words and your calling out that it's all of it. Thank you very much. And that people's lives are on the line, and it's, yeah, we need to respect the entire story and fact. Thank you very much for highlighting that. Elle.
Again, I want to thank my sister panelists for your words. Truly, Indigenous youth all over the world is the biggest inspiration and motivation to keep working with these issues. So I appreciate it, and I will sign under everything that has been said now, and also just to show my solidarity and support from Sápmi to the rest of you, and come with this reminder that one day capitalism will fall, and what's going to be left is Indigenous traditional knowledge. So yeah, thank you.
I love that. Yes, capitalism is going to fall. Let's say that loud enough for the people in the back of the room. Capitalism is going to fall, and what will be there is traditional ecological knowledge and Indigenous peoples. Okay, and we will give the final word to Talia, because I believe that we have unfortunately lost Judy again, but we will send her our good wishes. Talia, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I really just want to, thank everybody for coming to the panel and listening. And I want to thank my fellow panelists, because it's just been amazing to speak amongst you guys and to learn from everybody. And, as everyone was saying, we're just in this fight together, and any ways that we can show support. It really does come down to us, as Indigenous people, and it's our time within our creation stories. It's the time that, the non-natives are ready to listen to the Indigenous perspectives. So just remember that, because it's definitely difficult. I can say from personal experience of being here, at that front line with the colonists that don't want to, give up their history, it's his story that they created to benefit themselves and their image. And, it gets difficult, and, they like to say, oh, I like your passion, and, push you in the corner to, create this, angry Indian sort of perspective or Indigenous person, to box you up and create that propaganda. And it's been used against my people for, time immemorial, since they first set foot on this shore. So just, keeping that passion and that medicine within yourself, and, remembering your ceremonies, and remembering whenever it gets too tough, there's always a place, because we actually, we have a home, not the king, our land. That's how we say our land in my language. And it's literally an extension from ourselves. We can't say, Natakim, like our land, without it being a part of us. And that's how we view, that's how we are as Indigenous people. And so, having that, we're already stronger as a people, because we have that connection and that strength that comes from that. And, Mother Earth isn't going to slow down or listen to the, Western laws and values. She's going to keep moving the way that she needs to keep moving. And we're here to support her. And we're here to, really live with our relatives, our natural relatives, and just keep on, within our way of life, and not get, brainwashed into the colonist system. So I just appreciate all of you guys for taking your time to really, devote your life's energy within this work, because I know it's from personal experience, it takes a lot, and it takes us coming together within these safe spaces to be able to speak amongst ourselves, to get that motivation to keep pushing forward. So I appreciate you all, and I love you all.
Wow, this has been just so extraordinary. I want to thank all of you panelists for taking time with us. You have taken time to share and time out of your very busy lives and the struggles you're in to be on this panel, and we deeply appreciate it. We want to make sure that people support you, which we will be sharing all the information about your organizations and work, so we can visibilize and support you in this way. And I want to thank you for your love, your brilliance, your outrage, your fight, your healing, and all of who you are, and that you're here and you're leading. And I know that you have deeply moved me personally. I sense this would be powerful, but it just really blew my mind and my heart open. And I think everyone listening will be learning so much from all of you. And yeah, it's not a pretty picture. You know, I don't want to end a note like, thank you and let's celebrate. You know, this is a struggle for life and death. And so, you know, let's go ahead and leave on that note. Why not? And to say, you know, this is ongoing, and we thank you, we love you, we support you, and thank you for your beauty, your scholarship, and everything that you've done in your advocacy. And we will be in touch, and we're going to go ahead and close this out, and we, you know, send good wishes to all of you in the powerful work you're doing. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all of our listeners. Thank you.